The night was cold, the kind of cold that bit through skin and bone. The ruins of the old city were silent. Only the wind moved through the broken walls, carrying dust and ash. In the corner of a shattered building sat a small alien girl, her body shivering, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, her big eyes filled with tears. She was alone, too alone for someone so young. Her people had been lost in the war, her family taken from her, and now she sat in the ruins like a forgotten shadow. No one looked at her, no one cared. The camp nearby was full of noise, lights, and food, but for her, there was only darkness, hunger, and fear. Her lips trembled as she whispered into the night, so soft that even the wind almost carried it away. "Can I have a dad?" The words were not meant for anyone. They were not meant for the stars or the ruins. It was a whisper from her heart, a desperate wish of a child who had nothing left. But someone heard. A man, a human, was walking through the ruins, his boots heavy on the ground, his jacket torn but warm enough to keep him alive in the freezing night. He had been a soldier once. Now he was just a wanderer who helped where he could. He had seen battles. He had seen pain, but he had never heard a whisper that cut through him like this one. He froze, his ears catching the faint sound. He thought maybe it was his mind playing tricks, but then he heard it again. The same small voice, trembling and weak. "Can I have a dad?" He followed the sound, careful, his eyes scanning the darkness until he saw her, the girl sitting there, her skin pale, marked with faint lines that glowed faintly like all of her kind, her clothes torn, her small hands blue from the cold. For a moment he just stood there, his chest heavy. He knew the rules. Humans were not supposed to interfere too much with alien refugees. It caused trouble, but rules meant nothing when he saw her. He walked closer, his steps slow so he wouldn't scare her. "Hey," he said softly, his voice carrying warmth. "Are you all right?" The girl flinched, her eyes wide, fear rushing into her body. She tried to push back deeper into the ruins as if she might disappear into the shadows. "I won't hurt you," the man said, kneeling down so his height wasn't frightening. "I just heard you whisper." The girl blinked, her lips trembling. "You heard?" she asked, her voice barely a breath. "Yes," he nodded. "I heard." Her tears rolled down her cheeks, shining in the faint moonlight. She did not know why, but she felt that maybe this human was different. Maybe he was safe. "Please," she whispered again. "Can I have a dad?" The man felt his throat tighten. He had seen soldiers die. He had lost friends, but nothing had ever broken him like these 5 words from a child. For a second, he had no answer. He took off his jacket and wrapped it gently around her small shoulders, the fabric swallowing her frame. Her shivers slowed. She blinked up at him with wide eyes. "You don't need to be alone anymore," he said quietly. "Not tonight." The girl looked at him, unsure if she could believe, unsure if this warmth would vanish like all the others before, but she nodded slowly, the smallest hope flickering inside her. From the camp nearby, voices rose, alien guards moving through the ruins with harsh eyes. They did not like humans getting involved with their people. They did not want outsiders taking responsibility. The man saw them. He knew what their stares meant: trouble, questions, warnings. But he didn't care. He had already made his choice. He lifted the girl gently into his arms. She was light as if hunger had carved away her strength. Her head rested against his chest, her eyes half closing. For the first time in so long, she felt safe. The guard stopped him, one of them stepping forward, his armor scratched from the war, his eyes sharp. "That child does not belong to you," he said coldly. The man met his gaze, his jaw tight. "Then maybe she belongs to no one," he said. "But tonight she is not being left in the cold." The guard hissed, his hand twitching as if ready to block him, but the girl stirred, her small voice breaking the silence. "Dad, please." The word froze everyone. The guards looked at her, then at the human, suspicion in their eyes, but also silence, because what could they say to a child who had lost everything? The man tightened his hold, his steps firm as he walked, past them, the night wind pressing against his back, the ruins fading behind him. For the girl, the world was still broken. But in that moment, she was no longer invisible, no longer forgotten. She had found someone who heard her whisper, and that whisper had already begun to change her life. The man knew nothing about what danger this choice would bring. He did not know about the shadows watching from afar, or the enemies that would come. But he knew one thing. He could not walk away. And so, in the ruins of a broken city, a new bond was born, one that would test them both, one that would shake the stars. The small alien girl woke up in a place she did not know. Her body was wrapped in warmth. Not the cold stone of the ruins, but a real blanket, soft and heavy. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. She opened her glowing eyes and saw the human sitting near the fire. His jacket hung on a chair, his hands busy stirring a pot over the flames. The smell of warm food filled the small shelter. Her stomach growled before she could even speak. The sound loud in the quiet room. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself, embarrassed. The man turned and smiled, his tired face softening. "You're awake," he said gently. "Good timing. The food is almost ready." The girl blinked, her lips parting. Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice small, broken like glass. The man paused for a moment, looking into the fire, then at her. "Because no one should be left out there," he said simply, "especially not a child." She lowered, her eyes still unsure, still afraid, but the warmth around her told her he was not lying. When he handed her a bowl, she stared at it as if it were treasure, steam rising, the smell of cooked vegetables and broth wrapping around her. She had not eaten real food in days, maybe weeks. Her hands trembled as she lifted the spoon, spilling half of it before she finally tasted it. Her eyes widened, and for the first time in so long, she smiled, a tiny, fragile smile. The man watched her, and something inside him stirred, a feeling he had not known for years, not since before the war took everything from him. "What's your name?" he asked softly. The girl hesitated as if the word itself might hurt. "Lyra," she whispered. "Lyra," he repeated, nodding slowly. "That's a strong name." She looked at him, almost confused. "You really think so?" "Yes," he said firmly, "I do." For a moment silence wrapped them, but it was not heavy. It was safe, the crackle of fire filling the room. Outside, however, the world was not safe. Unseen eyes watched through cracks and shadows. Alien guards and strangers who had followed the man, suspicious of his choice, whispering to each other that the child was not ordinary, that she was dangerous. But inside, the human did not care. He was only looking at her, at the way she slowly came back to life with every bite. After she finished eating, she leaned against the blanket, her body tired but her heart lighter. "Do you really want me?" she asked suddenly, her voice trembling. "Or will you leave me too?" The man froze, her words cut deeper than he expected. "I won't leave you," he said, his voice steady. "Not now, not ever." Tears rolled down her face again, but this time they were not only of sadness, they were mixed with hope. She looked at him, her small hands clutching the blanket. Then, "Can I call you Dad?" The word hit him like a wave. He had not been called that in years. Memories of his own lost family rose in his chest, but instead of pain, he felt a strange warmth. He nodded slowly, his voice low, but firm. "Yes, you can." Her eyes lit up, glowing faintly in the firelight. "Dad," she whispered, testing the word like a fragile secret, then again louder. "Dad." The man smiled, and for the first time in many years he felt alive. But outside, trouble was brewing. A tall shadow stepped back from the window where it had been watching, its voice deep and angry as it spoke into a comm device. "The girl has been found, the human has taken her, prepare to move." Inside, unaware of the danger, Lyra finally slept peacefully, her small body curled under the blanket, her lips still carrying the ghost of a smile. The man, however, could not sleep. He sat awake by the fire, his rifle leaning against the wall, his eyes scanning the door. He knew this was only the beginning. Still, when he looked back at the sleeping child, his heart whispered a vow, a promise he could not break. "They'll have to go through me first," he muttered under his breath. The bond between them was fragile, born only hours ago, but it was real, more real than anything he had felt since the war, and in that fragile bond lay strength neither of them yet understood. The night passed, the fire burned low, and as the first light of dawn crept into the shelter, a new life began, not just for Lyra, but for the man who had chosen to hear her whisper. And somewhere far away, enemies stirred, leaders argued, and hunters sharpened their blades because one small whisper had changed everything. The man did not know it yet, but by answering her, he had stepped into a story that would shake worlds, a story written not by power or armies, but by a child's desperate plea for a father, and the galaxy was not ready for what would come next. The next morning was not quiet. The human, his name was Daniel, stepped outside the small shelter with Lyra holding onto his hand, her small fingers clutching his as if letting go would mean losing him forever. The camp was awake, fires smoking, traders shouting, guards patrolling, and eyes, too many eyes watching them. People whispered, some pointed, others frowned. "That's the girl," a voice hissed, "the lost one." Another muttered, "Why is the human with her?" Daniel ignored them, but he felt the weight of their stares pressing against his back. Lyra lowered her head, her glowing eyes hidden under his jacket's hood. She could feel the hate, the fear, the rejection. They reached the food stalls. Daniel bought bread with the few credits he had, breaking it into pieces and giving the first piece to Lyra. Her lips parted in surprise. She wasn't used to eating before others. "Go on," he said gently. "You first." She smiled weakly and took a bite, but around them the whispers grew louder. A group of alien guards approached, their armor clinking, their faces cold. The leader stepped forward. "Human," he said sharply, "you cannot keep her." Daniel looked him in the eye, his jaw tight. "She was freezing in the ruins. I found her dying. No one else cared." The guard's lips curled. "You don't understand. She is not just a child. She is dangerous." Lyra flinched, her grip on Daniel's hand tightening. "I'm not dangerous," she whispered, her voice trembling. But the guards ignored her. Daniel knelt so his eyes were level with hers. "Don't listen to them," he said firmly. "You're not dangerous. You're just a girl who deserves to live," the guard growled, stepping closer. "You are interfering with matters that do not belong to you, human. Hand her over." Daniel stood tall, placing himself between the guards and the child, his voice like steel. "No!" The crowd gasped, some in shock, some in anger. A human defying the alien guard was not something they saw often. For a moment, silence stretched. Then the guard's hand went to his weapon. But before he could draw it, a shrill voice cried out, "Dad!" It was Lyra, her eyes wide with fear, her small arms wrapping around Daniel's waist, the word echoing in the air, heavier than any weapon. The guards froze. The crowd went silent. Whispers turned into stunned gasps. "She called him Dad," someone said. Daniel's heart pounded, but he did not step back. Instead, he placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder, steady and protective. "She has chosen," he said quietly, "and I will not betray that." The guards exchanged looks. Their orders were clear, but so were the eyes of the people around them, now filled with confusion, pity, and even a hint of respect. It was not so simple anymore. The leader finally hissed, "This is not over," and gestured for his men to stand down. They retreated, but their glares promised trouble. Daniel exhaled slowly, his muscles tense. He bent down and whispered to Lyra, "It's all right, I've got you." But in his heart, he knew it was not all right. Later that evening, as they returned to the shelter, Daniel noticed a figure standing in the shadows, tall, cloaked, watching. When their eyes met, the figure vanished into the crowd. A chill ran down his spine. Inside, Lyra curled up near the fire, hugging the blanket. "They hate me," she whispered. "Everyone hates me." Daniel sat beside her, his voice calm but firm. "Not everyone, I don't, and I never will." She looked at him, her glowing eyes shimmering with tears. "But why?" Why me? I'm nothing. He shook his head. You're not nothing, Lyra. You're someone worth protecting, someone worth fighting for. Her lips trembled. She wanted to believe him, but fear still gripped her heart. That night, Daniel stayed awake. Again, the rifle beside him, his eyes on the door. He remembered the cloaked figure, the threats of the guards, the stares of the crowd. He knew the truth. By choosing to protect her, he had turned the world against him. And in the darkness outside, the cloaked figure met with others, their voices low and dangerous. The girl lives, one whispered. The bloodline survives. We cannot allow that, another growled. The council will demand her death, but the human stands in the way. Then, the first voice replied, we remove the human. Back, in the shelter, Lyra stirred in her sleep, whispering again. But this time it was not out of fear. It was a single word that carried hope even in the face of danger. Dad. Daniel heard her, and though danger closed in on every side, his heart was steady. He had made his choice, and he would not turn back. The world was against them, but together, they were no longer alone. And that was enough. For now. The night was heavy with silence, but Daniel could not rest. He sat near the dim fire, the rifle leaning against the wall, his eyes scanning the shadows. Every creak and whisper of the wind made him tense. Danger was close. He could feel it. Lyra stirred, in her sleep. Her small face twisted in a dream, sweat beading her forehead. Her lips moved, whispering names. Names Daniel did not know. Names that sounded royal, powerful, full of sorrow. Suddenly she gasped and woke, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Tears streaming down her cheeks, Daniel was at her side instantly. Lyra, he said softly, it's just a dream. She shook her head, clutching his arm. It wasn't a dream, she whispered. It was memory. Daniel frowned. Memory. Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to speak. I remember fire, soldiers. My mother's scream, she told me to run. She told me not to stop. She called me her little star. Her lips quivered. And then, the sky burned. Daniel's chest tightened. He placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and firm. You don't have to remember it all now, he said gently. You're safe. But she shook her head again, her eyes glowing brighter. No, you don't understand. My mother was not just anyone, she was a queen. The words struck him like a thunderclap, his mind racing. A queen. Yes, she whispered, curling into herself. And I am her daughter. Daniel stared at her, the truth falling into place like pieces of a broken puzzle, the whispers in the camp, the guards calling her dangerous, the cloaked figures watching. She was no ordinary orphan. She was the last child of a fallen royal line. That's why they hunt you, he muttered, more to himself than to her. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're heir to power they fear. Lyra looked at him, fear shining in her eyes. If they find me, they will kill me. Daniel clenched his fists, the soldier in him rising. Then they won't find you, he said firmly, but even as he spoke, he knew it would not be so simple. The next day he went into the camp to gather supplies, keeping Lyra hidden inside the shelter. But whispers followed him everywhere. People staring, muttering, voices sharp like knives. That's the one. He hides her. The council will not allow this. When he returned, he found a message scratched into the door, crude letters carved deep into the wood. Surrender her, or die. Daniel's jaw tightened, his hand gripping the rifle strap. He looked back at Lyra, who sat quietly on the floor, drawing circles in the dust with her finger. Innocent despite the storm that gathered around her. That evening, he sat with her. By the fire, Lyra, he said carefully. Do you know why your mother told you to run? Her eyes darkened. Because they wanted to end our line, she whispered. My clan ruled for many generations, but rivals rose. They feared our blood. They feared the light inside us. Daniel studied her, remembering the faint glow of her skin, the strange energy in her eyes when she cried. The light, he said slowly. Is that why they call you dangerous? She nodded, tears sliding down her face. When I was small, I lost control once. Fire came from my hands. It hurt people I didn't mean to. I was so scared. After that, everyone looked at me like I was a monster. Daniel reached out and held her small hand rough against delicate fingers. You're not a monster, he said, his voice steady. You're just a child who was never given a chance to be loved. She sobbed quietly, leaning against him. Dad, what if I hurt? You too? He shook his head, his eyes fierce. You won't, because I'm not afraid of you and I won't leave you no matter what. Outside, unseen in the shadows, the cloaked figure from before listened, its voice low into the comm device. It is true she is the queen's daughter, the last heir. The human protects her. Then the order is clear. Another voice crackled back. Kill the human, take the girl. Inside the shelter, Daniel brushed Lyra's hair gently, her breathing finally slowing as sleep claimed her again. But his mind was storming. He now knew the truth. She was more than a lost child. She was a target in a war of power, a secret that could ignite the galaxy. And by answering her whisper in the ruins, he had become part of it. He looked at her one last time before turning to the fire, his voice a vow, quiet but unbreakable. Whatever your past is, Lyra, I will not let them take you. You asked for a dad, and that's what you'll have. Even if I have to fight the whole galaxy. The flames flickered, shadows danced, and, far beyond the camp, ships began to move. Hunters sharpening their blades, councils making plans, enemies gathering strength. The hidden past was no longer hidden, and the war for one small girl had just begun. The night did not last long. By dawn, Daniel knew they had to leave. The camp was no longer safe. The message carved on the door was proof enough. The guards would return, and this time they would not ask, they would take. Lyra clutched his hand as they walked through the ruins toward the spaceport. Her small hood pulled low to hide her glowing eyes. She didn't speak, but he could feel her trembling. Don't be afraid, he told her quietly. As long as I'm here, no one will touch you. She nodded, but deep inside she wondered, could even a human protect her from the whole galaxy? At the port, Daniel used the last of his credits to hire a rusted old freighter, the kind no one cared to check too closely. The pilot was gone, but the ship was abandoned long enough for him to override its locks. He had been a soldier, and soldiers learned things. The engines roared to life, shaking dust into the air. As the ship lifted, Lyra stared out the small window, her eyes wide. She had never left the planet since the night of fire. She watched the ground fall away, the camp shrinking into nothing but smoke and lights. Where are we going? She asked softly. Daniel looked at the stars, his jaw set. Somewhere they can't find us. But already, in the black of space, shadows stirred. Enemy ships breaking away from hidden docks, hunters taking flight. The council's orders spreading like wildfire. Find the girl, destroy the human. Inside the freighter, life was rough. The ship rattled with every jump. The air tasted of old metal. But for Lyra, it was freedom. She wandered the narrow halls, touching walls, asking questions about buttons and screens. Daniel answered patiently, showing her how to strap in during jumps, how to heat food packs, even how to look at star charts. She laughed once, really laughed, and the sound filled the cold ship with warmth. But peace never lasted long. On the third day, alarms screamed, red lights flashing. Daniel rushed to the cockpit outside the viewport. 3 sleek ships closed in. Hunters, their weapons already glowing. Dad? Lyra's small voice trembled as she ran to him, her eyes wide with fear. Strap in, he ordered, his hands flying across controls. The freighter jolted as blasts shook its hull, sparks showering down. The hunters opened comms. A harsh voice crackled. Surrender the girl, human, and we may let you live. Daniel's teeth clenched. His reply was cold. Not a chance. He pulled the freighter into a sharp dive, the old ship groaning under the strain, but his hands were steady. He flew like the soldier he once was, weaving through debris fields, skimming the edges of asteroids, every move just a breath ahead of the hunter's fire. Lyra clung to her seat, her heart racing, fear choking her, until something inside her stirred, heat building in her chest, her skin glowing brighter. The hunters closed in, one ship locking onto them, its missile bays opening. But before it could fire, Lyra cried out. Her small hands pressed against the glass of the viewport. Light burst from her body, a wave of energy that shot into space like lightning. The hunter ship froze mid-flight, its systems sparking, engines dying, spinning helplessly into an asteroid. The explosion lit the dark. Daniel stared, his heart hammering. "Lyra!" She gasped, her small body shaking. I didn't mean to." Tears welled in her eyes. "I just wanted them to stop." Daniel grabbed her hand, his voice firm but gentle. "Listen to me. You saved us, but you must learn to control it, or they'll use it as an excuse to call you a monster." She nodded, sobbing. "But I don't want to be a monster." "Dad." "You're not," he said, his voice steady. "You're my daughter, that's all." The two remaining hunters pulled back, their comms silent. But Daniel knew it was not retreat. It was warning. They had seen what Lyra could do, and they would not stop now. Hours later, after the danger had passed, Daniel checked the star charts again, plotting a course far away, to a system forgotten by most, hidden in the shadows of war. But as he looked at Lyra, who slept curled in her seat, her small hand still clutching his sleeve, he knew this was only the beginning, because now the galaxy would not just hunt her, they would fear her, and fear was more dangerous than any weapon. Far across the stars, in a council chamber of silver walls and cold eyes, alien leaders spoke, their voices sharp. "The heir lives," one hissed, "and she has awakened her power. The human shields her," another spat. "He must be eliminated." "Find them," the leader growled. "Chase them to the edge of the stars if you must, but do not let the bloodline rise again." Back in the freighter, Daniel whispered to himself as the stars stretched into lines, the ship jumping into hyperspace. "Run as fast as you want. I'll never let you take her." Beside him, Lyra stirred in her sleep, her voice a soft whisper. "Dad." And Daniel knew. No matter the cost, no matter the enemies, he would fight every star in the sky if it meant keeping that word alive. The chase had begun, and there was no turning back. The freighter drifted in deep space, far from the trade routes, its engines quiet, its lights dim. Daniel had shut down almost everything to hide. Inside, silence filled the ship, except for the hum of life support. Lyra sat on the floor of the cockpit, hugging her knees, her glowing eyes fixed on the stars. "Dad," she whispered softly, "why do they want me so badly?" Daniel leaned back in the pilot's chair, his hands rough, his face tired. "Because you're special," he said honestly. "Your blood, your power, it scares them." "But I didn't ask for it," she murmured. "I only asked for a dad." His chest tightened, those words cut deeper every time she said them. "I know," he said quietly. "But sometimes the universe doesn't care what we ask for. It only cares what we are." Before Lyra could reply, alarms shrieked, red lights flashing across the panels. Daniel jumped to his feet, his eyes narrowing. They found us. A sleek warship dropped out of hyperspace, blocking their path, its hull shining with the crest of the alien council, its weapons glowing. The comms crackled, a cold voice filling the cabin. "Human, this is your last chance. Surrender the child and you may live. Resist and you will die." Daniel's jaw tightened, his hand hovering over the controls. Lyra grabbed his sleeve, her voice trembling. "Dad, don't fight them, please." The voice continued. "We do not wish to harm you, but the girl cannot remain in your hands. Her power is too great, too dangerous. Hand her over, and we will take her to the council. We will teach her control. We will keep her safe." Daniel's heart pounded, his mind racing. It almost sounded reasonable. Safe, trained, protected. Wasn't that what Lyra needed? Wasn't that what he wanted for her? He looked down at her, her small hand clinging to him, her eyes wide, shimmering with fear. "Dad, don't leave me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They don't want to help me. They want to use me. I know it. Daniel swallowed hard, torn between reason and love, between survival and loyalty. For a soldier, the choice would be simple. Surrender, live another day. But he was not just a soldier anymore. He was something else, something heavier. He was her father. His voice was firm, steady as stone. I made you a promise. Lyra, and I won't break it, the comms hissed. Then you are a fool, human. Weapons powered up, the glow of plasma building in the void. Daniel slammed the controls. The freighter jolted into a desperate dive, blasts of energy slicing past, the hull rattling. Lyra cried out, clutching the chair. The warship gave chase, its guns firing relentlessly, sparks bursting across the freighter's panels, alarms screaming louder. Daniel gritted his teeth, pulling the ship through asteroid debris, weaving and dodging with a skill born of old battles. But the warship was faster, stronger, and every second it closed the gap. Dad? Lyra shouted, pointing at the viewport. They're boarding? Hooks and magnetic clamps shot from the warship, digging into the freighter's hull, a loud thud echoing through the ship. Enemy soldiers were coming. Daniel grabbed his rifle, his voice sharp. Stay here, don't move. Lyra shook her head violently, tears falling. No, they'll take me if you go alone. Before he could argue, the hatch exploded open. Armored figures stormed inside, weapons raised. Their leader stepped forward, his voice cold and commanding. Human, step aside. This is not your fight. Daniel raised his rifle, his eyes burning with defiance. Everything that threatens her is my fight. The soldiers moved in, but Lyra screamed, light bursting from her skin, the whole ship glowing. The soldiers stumbled, blinded, their weapons faltering. Daniel pulled her close, shielding her with his body. Lyra, control it. Listen to me. Breathe, he whispered urgently. Don't let it consume you. She trembled, the light flickering wildly, threatening to tear the ship apart. But his voice anchored her. Her breathing slowed. The glow dimmed. The soldiers hesitated, fear in their eyes. The leader snarled, She is unstable. She will destroy everything. We must take her. Daniel stepped forward, his rifle aimed squarely at the leader's chest, his voice like steel. You'll have to kill me first. The soldiers froze, none daring to fire. Silence stretched heavy. The leader's eyes narrowed. So be it, human, but you've chosen death, he signaled, and they retreated back to their ship, the clamps releasing, the warship pulling away. The freighter drifted again, damaged but free. Daniel lowered his rifle slowly, his heart still pounding. Lyra clung to him, sobbing into his chest. Dad, I thought you'd give me away. He held her tightly, his voice steady. Never, Lyra. Never. I'd rather die than break my word to you. Her tears soaked his shirt, but her sobs softened, replaced with quiet relief. She whispered one last word before sleep claimed her. Dad. Daniel closed his eyes, his arms tightening around her. He had made his choice, and there was no turning back. No council, no army, no galaxy would take her from him. And somewhere far behind, in the warship's shadowy chamber, the alien leader whispered to his soldiers, if the human wants to be her father, then he will share her fate, hunt them both until the stars themselves fall silent. The chase was not over. It had only become darker, sharper, deadlier. But Daniel was ready, because he was no longer running as a soldier, he was fighting as a father, and that made him unstoppable. The freighter floated in the dark, its hull scarred, its engines weak. Daniel sat in the cockpit, his body aching, his mind heavy beside him. Lyra slept curled in the chair, her small hand gripping his sleeve even in dreams. He stared at her face, soft, fragile, yet carrying power strong enough to shake fleets. He whispered to himself, She asked for a dad, and now the galaxy wants to tear us apart for it. Before dawn could come, alarm screamed again. Daniel's eyes snapped to the viewport, and his chest tightened. A fleet, an entire fleet, filled. The stars ahead, warships of the Council, sleek and merciless, their weapons glowing, their formation tight. They had come not with whispers, but with the strength of armies. Daniel clenched his fists, his heart pounding. They won't stop until they have her, he muttered. Lyra stirred, her eyes opening, glowing softly in the dark. Dad? she whispered. What's happening? He hesitated, then told her the truth. They've come for you, all of them. Fear flashed across her face, but then something steadier followed, her lips trembling as she whispered, I don't want to run anymore. Daniel turned to her, shocked. Lyra, she shook her head, tears in her eyes but voice steady. If I keep running, they'll always hunt us. But if I face them, maybe they'll see I'm not a monster. Maybe they'll see I just want to live. Daniel's heart broke at her words. She was just a child, yet already carrying the weight of an empire. You don't have to face them alone, he said firmly, because I'll stand right beside you. He rose, placing his hands on her shoulders, his voice steady. Remember this, Lyra. You're not dangerous. You're not cursed. You're mine, my daughter, and that's enough. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, whispering, Then we face them together. The comms crackled, the cold voice of the council leader filling the cockpit. Human, your defiance ends here. Surrender the girl or be destroyed. Daniel leaned forward, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. You want her? Then listen to her first, because she has something to say. There was silence, then mocking laughter. What can a child say that matters? But then Lyra's small voice broke through, trembling yet strong. I am Lyra, daughter of the fallen queen, heir to a bloodline you fear. But I am not your weapon. I am not your monster. I only asked for one thing. A dad? Her words echoed, through the comms, carried to every ship, every ear. Silence stretched in the void. Even Daniel felt the weight of it. The leader's voice returned, colder than ever. Pretty words, but they changed nothing. Weapons glowed brighter. The fleet prepared to fire. Daniel's hand tightened on the controls, ready to fight, ready to die. But before the council could fire, Lyra's body glowed, brighter and brighter, light filling the freighter, spilling into the stars. But this time it was different. Controlled, calm, steady. The energy flowing from her was not wild destruction. It was warmth. It was life. The ships around them faltered, their weapons dimming, their systems freezing. Through the glow, her voice, carried again, clear and pure. I don't want to destroy you, I only want to live, to love, to have what was taken from me. If that makes me dangerous, then so be it. But I will not run anymore. Daniel shielded his eyes, but he saw it. Entire warships drifting, their crews stunned, not by fear, but by awe. One by one, weapons powered down, voices rose in confusion, doubt, even respect. The council leader shouted in anger, Fire! Fire now! But no one obeyed. The soldiers looked at each other, hesitant, unwilling, because in that moment, they no longer saw a monster. They saw a child who only wanted a father. The glow faded, leaving silence in the stars. Daniel looked at Lyra, her small body weak, but her eyes steady, her power no longer a curse but a choice. The leader's voice broke again, bitter and furious. This is not the end, human girl. One day we will return. Daniel smirked coldly. Then you better bring more than fear, because fear doesn't work on us anymore. The warships slowly pulled back, their fleet dissolving into the void, leaving only silence behind. Inside the freighter, Daniel knelt in front of Lyra, holding her trembling hands. You did it, he whispered. You showed them who you are. Her lips curved into a faint smile. I only showed them who we are, Dad. Daniel's throat tightened. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. You're right, Lyra, this is us. Together. Through the viewport, dawn broke. The first rays of a new star rising over the edge of a distant planet, golden, light filling the cockpit. For the first time since the ruins, Lyra felt safe, not because the galaxy had changed, but because she was no longer alone. She had a father, and that was enough. The whisper that had once been a desperate plea had now become a vow, a bond stronger than war, stronger than fear, a bond that would carry them into every tomorrow. And as the freighter drifted into the light of the new dawn, the story of a human and the alien girl he chose as his daughter had only just begun.